Under Joe Biden, student loan repayment has basically been put on furlough. It's basically been put on hold for the past, I don't know how many years it's been for many of these Americans who haven't paid back their student loan. And with the elections just around the corner, it makes for a good little carrot on the stick on how the government wants Americans to vote. Now, of course, for the previous 2020 elections, that was one of the biggest things that Joe Biden talked about. And of course, women are the biggest demographic in America, and women also hold most student debt. Not only do they hold most student debt, but they also hold most credit card debt. And so the government always uses socialism against women. They use socialistic taxes. Well, if you vote for me, well, we're going to repay your student loan. Of course, Joe Biden did not do that because one, they can't. The government can't. In terms of just simple assets and liabilities, the student loan repayment for the government is an asset, even though it's a liability to you because you have to pay that loan back. But for the government, it's an asset because it pays an interest. And so, in terms of assets and liabilities on the government's balance sheet, 50% of the financial assets that the government has is student loan. So there's no way that they would ever uh, get rid of all the student loans. They might do it for some people, and it's just like a talking point, and it's just a way to lure women to say, "Hey, maybe this is it," right? Just like with black people, they use reparations talk all the time, and they just like kind of tug on the chain a little bit the moment they think that black people might not vote for them, then they kind of bring back that whole situation. That's why reparations talk is very prominent now because elections are coming. Elections are not too far around the corner. Of course, they need to start right seeding the conversations of what we're going to do for you if you vote for me this coming term. And of course, it's just all socialism at the end of the day. So most Americans are socialists. It's always what can the government do for you? I mean, you've already got socialized healthcare, socialized retirement, socialized educational system, upper educational system, just not talking about, elementary school, your K through 12, but then also your college is also being socialized. You got food production that is socialized. You have, hospitals. I mean, military, fire, like all of that. There's so many facets of American run society that runs overwhelmingly on socialism. And that's why when you look at places like New York and California, when you look at why New York and California are the way they are, it's because those are the biggest states that have the most socialism. So when you wonder why is there so much homelessness in California and in New York, why do you see so much drug abuse? Why do you see so much crime? Overwhelmingly, it's related to welfare via socialism. And so moving forward, this is what we're going to see for the next 2024 election. It's going to be a very big thing. I guarantee you, moving forward, every talking point is going to be related to socialistic practices, whether it was, for example, like child tax credit and getting women back to work. Because, one of the biggest reasons why women weren't going back to work was because of childcare costs. And so the government, of course, is going to increase welfare for women going in that direction so we can get them back to work. When all this goes away, overwhelmingly, these people are going to be impoverished. More so after the fact. I mean, just look at Native Americans. Native Americans have some of the biggest welfare, or some of the biggest welfare recipients by comparison to most groups, right? So, they get free land, no taxes, a lot of it related to either alcoholism, selling alcohol, or gambling. And they get a lot of money via the treaties. And when you look at actually the way the reservations are run like a commune. The chiefs run the lands that people are in essence are lent down because they don't own them. It's owned by the tribe, and so the tribe will give some land to an individual, and then that land can be taken away because that individual doesn't own it. And so you see that often a lot, and you see the alcoholism, diabetes, violence, single motherhood. I mean, as bad as people think, like many Black Americans have it in America, Native Americans have it even worse outside of like Eskimos, and that's overwhelmingly because they've held together their ethnicity or like their culture, I should say, and so they haven't been as impacted as like say many that live on the reservations, like for example in the north, right, like North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, etc. Overwhelmingly, you see, like especially when I was there, the poverty, the amount of poverty that you see from welfare is staggering. And this was actually happened in Jamestown. This isn't the first, in essence, go around where we've seen socialism and communism in America. One of the 13 colonies, Jamestown, actually practiced socialism. The result was that huge portions of the colony starved to the point where the people were just unwilling to work because they kept thinking, well, someone else was going to work, someone else was going to plant, someone else was going to sow the seeds, and someone else was going to reap the harvest and then give it to me for nothing. That the people were eating their children. And that's how lazy humans can be. That's why you kind of see many of these Americans down in places like Philadelphia or in LA, you go to downtown LA, San Francisco, you see a lot of drug use. And you see these people and you think, I don't understand. Like why do they make this choice? And overwhelmingly, it's just related to welfare. When you give people, it's like Jesus said, you give a man a fish, and he lives for the day. He's got to come right back to you to get another fish. But if you teach a man how to fish, well, then he lives forever. And so, this is what the American government pushes. It always pushes. I'm going to give you a fish, you got to come back tomorrow. I'm going to give you a fish this election, you got to come back next election. And it perpetuates slavery in America. And ironically, it's overwhelmingly pushed by Democrats. And we really don't have a Republican Party anymore because yesterday's Democrats are basically today's Republicans, right? Like Donald Trump. Donald Trump forever was a Democrat. For as long as I could remember, Donald Trump was a Democrat. Always was a Democrat. Especially living in New York, he always voted and pushed for the Democratic Party. But the concepts are so far left for most Democrats that he looks like a Republican. Look at Tim Pool. Tim Pool has always been a lefty. Everybody, Tim Pool, what's his face? Joe Rogan, all these people, for the longest, have always been viewed as leftists by comparison to the right 20 years ago, right? The anti-gay, the no gay marriage, etc. By comparison to those people, Joe Rogan was a lefty, right? You compare them. But when you compare the leftists today that are like, we need to be able to chop your son's dick off, we need to be able to lob your daughter's breasts off to the altar of transgenderism. If you're not for that, well, then you're a Nazi, clearly. You're clearly a Nazi. You're clearly a far-right fascist. But this is what socialism always produces. And it's been so long in America. It's been rooted in America for so long. Ironically, when you look up when the Federal Reserve first got its start, and also around the same time where you had like, I forgot what tax it was. I can't remember off the top of my head. But in any event, when you look at the inception of the Federal Reserve, one of the first things that they instituted was Social Security. And so that was one of the biggest welfare programs that they had created for like the baby boomer generation. And so this whole generation continued. That's how they had the good times. And individuals like Reagan warned them that your children and your grandchildren would be the ones who would pay for it. And they were just like, shut up, you old man, get out of the way, right? It's America, we're back. And that wasn't the case. And so if you're living today, you are those children and those grandchildren who will suffer because there's no more money left, right? The boomers voted for it all. They voted for their money, they voted for their children's money, and they voted for their grandchildren's money too. And if push comes to shove, these people will continue to vote for wealth. I mean, shoot, there is no money in the coffers for Social Security. People like me, I'm basically a Gen Xer. I know that there isn't going to be any money there for me. and the taxes that we're paying and the taxes that Gen Z are paying and the millennials, etc., that welfare will not be there for them. We're basically paying for what people 2 and 3 generations voted for themselves, just perpetual debt slavery. And the women that exist now are voting for the enslavement of their great grandchildren with, pay my student loans, right? With give me my welfare. Where's my stimmy check, people? And this is where we are. And it will continue in that direction. When America is not able to continue to create money, when they're no longer the world reserve currency, and when more nations just get tired of subsidizing America's high lifestyle, because other people want to live good too, right? You have people in other countries and they're growing and they're producing, and they're like, well, wait a minute. Why am I being taxed via inflation so that your people can live good while my people live poor? Now, it only works as long as you have more military might. And that's what you see. That's why you see America going to war. When that goes away, and they're not doing so great against Russia in Ukraine, so allegedly, is probably why they don't show anything. But when that goes away, all the welfare goes away. And if you think you see crime now, just wait until that day happens. And people keep thinking, oh, it's not going to happen, never going to happen, we're never going to lose world reserve status. And it's like, poverty happens gradually and then all at once, just like all those banks, right? That's why the government went out there and printed all that money. And they were like, we need to immediately fix this situation, right? Because you had a lot of wealthy people that were like, I need to pull my money out of the bank. And when too many people do that, the jig is up. And that's why they pushed so hard, very quickly, immediately, even though they're telling you, oh, there's a recession. It's like, really? If you really wanted a recession, you would have let that bank collapse. But you didn't. You automatically bought up all those assets, gave out billions in loans to Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan, and they bought up all those assets, right? For 100% on the dollar. When that goes, that's how dire the circumstance is. That the moment the people, because it's all perception, right? It's all people's perception. There's no value to the dollar. The moment that perception goes away, it happens gradually and then all at once. And that's exactly how poverty will happen in America. People keep thinking, because it happens slowly. It happens slowly, little by little. They devalue the dollar. They devalue the dollar. And all those other countries that are holding dollars because they want to buy commodities, eventually those people get tired of it. That's why you see many other countries, we're not going to do deals for oil or whatever in dollars. We're going to do it in our own currency. Why? Because you're just creating inflation. You're just creating this money out of thin air. And then you're buying our resources. So we're not going to do that anymore. We're not going to utilize your currency. We'll just use our own currency if that's the case. There's no point, because all you're doing is just devaluing the dollars that we're holding. The people in the country don't do business in dollars. They do business in their own currency, just like America does, right? We don't do business in the Colombian peso. We do business in dollars. And if Colombia was just printing money and buying the food that we make, right? If they were just able to buy the ass, people are like, hey, this is stupid. Like, they're just creating this money out of thin air, and they're just taking what we're working hard for. And that's what many people abroad are realizing, and they're able to push back because they're able to do it as a group. America fucked up when they went to war with Russia and kicked Russia off of the SWIFT system. And so many of these other countries are just like, if Russia's not afraid of them and Russia's able to push back, well, maybe we should side with Russia. And that's what's happening. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.